It's the same in Denmark and a lot of the Scandinavian countries where they had, and still have in some instances, an established church, but with very, very low levels of belief. And I think that is because we've had an established church that has kept religion in a box. We haven't had a free market of religion here in the way that they do in America. So we have fewer religious people, strangely. And whenever I make this point about religion going down the pan generally in Europe, fewer and fewer believers, more and more secularists, people say to me, oh, but that doesn't work. I mean, because look at America. If the West is becoming less and less religious, what about America, where its religion is overwhelmingly part of the culture? And the other theory is that in the West, in Europe, we have a health service. It's as simple as that. We have a health service and a social structure that will cradle you, from cradle to grave actually. You're safe. There's a safety net. You'll never be allowed to die in the gutter. There's always somebody ready to rescue you. It's not like that in America. I don't know whether any of you have seen that Michael Moore film, Sicko, where he looks at the American health system in relation to the European one and finds that the American system is really, really cruel. Not only do you have to be in work to get the insurance you need to get medical treatment, but the insurance companies will go to the moon and back to make sure they don't pay out, even when you try to make a claim. So there are people who are dying in the gutter in America, even though it's a relatively rich country. So that is why there are so few believers in Europe, so many in America, even though we generally refer to as the West. So secular societies. We've got the National Secular Society here in Britain, and we're trying to redefine what we want. What do we want? Do we want this separation of church and state? Or do we want to attack religion in a sort of anti-clerical way? There's no agreement amongst the members, and I'll be very interested to actually hear what you've got to say about this, because I haven't sorted it out in my own mind about where I want the National Secular Society to go. I sort of, one day we'll be looking at the separation model and saying, let's stick to that. Let's forget all about the Dawkins stuff and about undermining religion and doing it down. Let's just stick to separating religion from the state, getting the church disestablished, and making sure that religion doesn't have any privilege or power. We get rid of the faith schools, we get rid of the bishops in the House of Lords, and all that, all the stuff. But a lot of our members really do want to go down the Dawkins line. They want to attack religion. And so we do have the potential for another big-time argument within the secular movement, the way things are going. Whether Britain will ever be a secular society, I don't know in a technical sense. I think we are already a secular society in the sense that not many people are religious. But whether we will ever be a technically secular society with the church and state separated, I don't know. The topic has been raised recently, a couple of times in Parliament, and we haven't heard it mentioned for decades. Suddenly it's back on the agenda. People are becoming a little bit nervous about religion again because it's resurgent. Christianity is resurgent on the back of Islam, and we are seeing membership of the NSS rising because people are thinking, what can I do about this? How can I make a stand against this encroaching religion that is suddenly, all over Parliament? People are bringing forward legislation in Parliament based on religious principles. And you think, we've got to stand up against this, otherwise we're going to end up with a really overbearing religious legal system. In this country we're in danger. that we have got an established church that has got really political privilege, it has got access to Downing Street. I read in an interview with a bishop who said that he was quite thrilled that he had access to Downing Street. The Archbishop of Canterbury said, you know, I just have to ring and I will get an appointment with the Prime Minister within 2 days. You know, Downing Street is open to them, where it's not open to us. We have to struggle, we have to really lobby hard to get our voice heard, even though there are more of us than there are of them. The problem is, organising secularists. How do you get them to organise? How do you herd cats? How do you know, get people who, they will say, well, the only thing we've got in common is that we don't believe in God. Well, I would say, no, that's not true. The thing we've got in common is that we want a secular society. We want separation of church and state. We want an end to faith schools and all that kind of thing. Surely that's a political aim that we can agree on. So we're looking to define ourselves in the National Secular Society, which way we're going to go. It isn't decided yet, but I think the move is towards a purely secularist agenda rather than the anti-religious, anti-clerical one that some people want. I think we might lose a few members because of that. And we do sometimes, because of that, give out a mixed message to the press. You know, it's so easy for them to say, you're not really the National Secular Society, you're just the National Atheist Society. And we had a little bit of that over the last week, because when Barbara Smoker was in situ, she wrote these debaptism certificates, which were, you know, a joke really, a satire on baptism. The idea that you can be brought into the church as a babe in arms. She wrote this certificate saying, I renounce the baptism and all this kind of thing. And you download it and sign it. It means nothing. It's just a gesture. And this week, in a lot of the press and on the BBC, one of our members, called John Hunt, decided that he was going to try and make it official. So he'd been pressing the Church of England to debaptise him. He'd actually written to the church where he'd baptised and said, I want my name off the roll. I don't want anything to do with this organisation. And they said, well, sorry, you can't do that. So he then went to the Information Commissioner of the Data Protection Act and said, can you make them take my name off this list? As you could if it was on a mailing list, you know, you could order them to take my name off. And they said, well, no, because most baptismal records are kept on paper, and the Data Protection Act only covers electronic data. So until they computerise all the baptismal records, we can't do that. But the church then said, well, we're not covered by the Data Protection Act anyway. So, and we stopped there, but I then had an email from the Catholic Church,